Alrighty.
Shalom, brethren. Welcome all. So, not that anyone is here to hear me say that by the time anyone's here, but if you're watching later. So, this is me and CJ's weekly meeting where we address the state of the church. So, this is me and CJ's meeting where we address the. Okay, that was my audio kicking in. I had to mute that. Then, okay. It's probably just my computer. My computer sounds like it's working hard. So this is CJ and I's weekly meeting. CJ and I want to be on the ball, and we want to help each other as we do things in our ministries to sort of do the best with them and all that sort of stuff. And we invite other people to be here too and encourage others to also be on the ball. But this isn't really like a show, so it's not really something that we're promoting in that sense. It's sort of our behind-the-scenes meeting, but it's a church meeting, so here it is for everybody else. By church meeting, I mean, where 2 or 3 of us or more are gathered together in his name. So, okay, so this week, what I wanted to focus more on is the fact that the church is the pillar of truth. So rather than like, we haven't done well enough, I wanted to balance that out with that we are the pillar of truth because of Jesus. At the same time, the whole thing is like, because we're the pillar of truth, let's be the pillar of truth. So it is going to kind of be the same thing where it's like, let's really do this stuff. There's a video of ADs I want to go. Sure. CJ, I just had a little bit of a problem with my display. Have you been hearing me okay?
So everything that you're saying is coming in, but it's not all coming in at the same pace that it should be. So I've been ignoring it because I'm not losing anything that you're saying. But it is like slowed down, you know what I mean? So roboting, that's the term.
Okay. I touched my tinfoil antenna on my computer. Does that seem to have fixed it?
Yeah, absolutely, actually.
Okay, so hopefully that fixed it, because sort of the less I touch it, the better. My computer is probably struggling because I've been working on your logo, which I use Paint 3D for. And I bought a gaming computer so that it would be powerful enough. But I probably, maybe there's a difference between gaming and studio as far as what's best in a computer. And I think when I shopped for my computer, I should have said I wanted a studio computer to like do projects with and stuff. So I had to delete the gaming software because it was actually bogging my computer down. So all that to say, I think my computer does not run Paint 3D necessarily the best. It struggles with it.
Certainly understand that.
It might have been, but it might have been my internet connection. So I don't know what it is, but I'm not roboting so far anymore.
No, you've been good since you touched the antenna.
Okay, good. So yeah, and I went to the store to buy an antenna, and I can't buy it at the in-person store. So then I was able to build myself an antenna, because obviously if I'm not getting it in person, to get back online right away, I wanted to get back online right away. So I built myself an antenna to get back online right away. And I've never shopped at Amazon. I don't plan to ever shop at Amazon. So on the internet, I'm going to get my antenna. Because I'm quite sure Amazon is like a key player in being part of the enemy and all that. So, and because everybody sort of compromises with the whole Amazon thing, it gives them like an absurd amount of power. I'm just like, I don't want to be part of that. So I'm not part of it, and that makes absolutely no difference. Yay! But it's like, if we shouldn't be part of things, then there's always got to be someone who's not part of each thing first, you know? And maybe we can all encourage each other to not be part of things we shouldn't be a part of. So there's something I want to share, because last time, and it looks like we do have one viewer now. So welcome, one viewer, because I think the one viewer before was just myself. So I'm going, last time I was talking about how I was confident David Platt is a Marxist infiltrator. Well, right afterwards, I went over to Brother Sal's channel, and well, there's also the local issue with people still hanging out with Smokey and all that. So I've parted ways with the people who are hanging out with Smokey. Like when I messaged you in side chat, I sort of didn't want to, because I asked Standing Truth to remove my wrench. But I will mention is I saw another channel there called Angel White, and I subbed with my other channel, not with my personal Christian channel, which is this one, but my other personal channel, which is for, like, you know, watching people who farm or maybe play Mario or something if I want to relax, which I haven't been doing since the whole war thing, you know. I mean, I think I watched one of his 20-minute farming videos, and that's the only thing I've been doing besides keeping up with war, taking care of myself, you know, doing things in the community, all that. And so, yeah, it's kind of crazy. We're already at Thursday now. Yeah. And it feels like Sabbath was just yesterday, you know? I mean, it's been a whole different pace for me. I messed up scheduling this with CJ. I don't work well on autopilot. And when we scheduled it, I did the math backwards on the 1 hour time difference, which made a 2 hour difference. So that's why we didn't have the show earlier, was because I thought CJ scheduled 2 hours later because I made the mistake. But I've just been like, hello, Kevin. Well, good to see you. So yeah, so I've been outpacing myself. But oh yeah, but this gentleman said that he was going to, like, you know, promote Standing's channel to his 17,000 subscribers. I presume the person is a he. But then he saw that Smokey Saint had a wrench on Standing's channel. So he told, I don't know if Standing saw it because chat was pretty busy, but he said he was not going to do so as long as Smokey had a wrench channel. And this is just some, like, random Christian YouTuber. But his channel looks kind of conspiracy theory stuff. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because he's like using globalism stuff more from, like, the jab side and from Trump being a theater kind of side. So I've got it. So yeah, I told him, I was like, you know, I saw what you said, so I'm going to check out your channel and inspect this stuff, because I don't know as much about it as I do about the Marxism side of the globalism schemes. So that's a good way, all the way back around to Marxism, right? But also a good example of someone just doing the proper thing regarding a church standard and regarding Smokey, you know? So, and something that has nothing to do with us, you know? I mean, I don't think he's ever seen any discussion I've had about Smokey anywhere on the internet. None of those are, like, things that people from general YouTube see. They're all stuff that people in this community see, right? By community, people who are connected in communication, you know? So, yeah, so then I went to, so after last week's State of the Church weekly address, I was calling out all the Marxism and David Platt is a Marxist. And then Sandy Pigeon over at Sal's channel shared a link. So I'm going to share it. I searched it on Bing. I should be using DuckDuckGo. Let's fix that. And then I'll look for the same thing now. Because I've been using Bing for no reason when people that I would rather follow their advice than someone else's advice anyway, they suggest DuckDuckGo. So Platt globalism, type of 30 pieces of silver. That's the publication, then I put Platt Globalism, and this should be it. Yep. So, and how's my everything going, CJ, as far as you can tell?
You only had like just very brief kind of normal streaming sort of roboting since you touched the thing. So throughout the whole thing, maybe like 2 seconds of roboting since then, and it's been like 6-7 minutes.
Hey, well, I'll just tolerate it rather than risk making it worse then, even though normally I don't get any. So yeah, I'm just gonna need to buy another antenna so that I don't ever deal with these problems. But that involves doing online shopping, and like even though I'm sure it's easier than shopping in person, it's just not what I like to do.
Right.
Globalist evangelicals, how deep is the deceit? So this is 30piecesofsilver.org. And they spell it out up here, but then you can actually see up here. It's one word, 30 pieces of silver, and then .org, like a real .org, not spelled out. And then let's just go ahead and read it. I just discovered this literally just a couple hours after all the stuff I was saying. Globalist evangelicals, how deep is the deceit? And we'll go ahead and zoom in until the side column goes away. Key leaders in the evangelical movement have no hesitation in promoting the global goals of an antichrist world system. David Platt is/has become one of the more obvious and shameless. This is by someone named Reverend Thomas Littleton. So I know that I think most people who watch this would disagree with the title Reverend, with the exception of one person who I think watches this channel some. I know he's a brother of ours that watches CJ's channel. But he has stopped using the title Reverend also. So, anyway,
yeah,
this is written by someone named Reverend.
I was just going to say, for me personally, the only title I can ever remember a clergy member taking, and title I even put kind of in air quotes, is just pastor.
Oh, yeah. Well, pastor, I don't think is... Well, you know, depending on the attitude towards it, it may very well be a title, right? But
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
depends on the guy, though.
A pastor is a little different because it says that it's your job to pastor the sheep, whereas reverend says that you need to be reverenced.
Right, exactly.
So that, and father also is one that Jesus specifically speaks against. So that's why people have a problem with reverend, but not pastors, because you know, they just have very different meanings. The words themselves do. So yeah. Anyway, let's get to reading. So David Platt is the popular pastor who heads the Radical and Secret Church brands, among other movements. Platt is currently the pastor of McLean Bible Church in Virginia. He became popular as a pastor of the troubled church at Brook Hills in Birmingham, Alabama, when its founding pastor became embroiled in a moral failure. Platt's rise to the senior pastor's position of the 4,200-member Southern Baptist megachurch made him the youngest megachurch pastor in history, according to the New York Times. He's almost shrunk down McLean Bible Church to that size.
No kidding.
Yeah, and but what is he? I mean, that's part of it. It's war against the church. He's an infiltrator, and when the church gets smaller, it means the only people left are the people who will tolerate him. So his power is consolidated because anyone who's against him is gone. Anyway, let's read the article, though. Platt's star faded in his short and troubled time as head of the SBC International Missions Board. I was thinking about that. The SBC, the largest denomination in the United States, the United States being a very key nation. So we're talking about one of the largest denominations besides Romanism itself, you know. There may be a couple other sects that are larger, Orthodox sects, or if you talk about Orthodoxy as a whole, all stuff is somewhat in the Roman category. You know, I definitely would say Anglicanism is just Romanism, really. It was a little different when, the king wanted the power of a pope, so he established his own Romanism and called it Anglicanism, right? The Anglican Church. And then you had no choice if you were a Christian. You were like forced to be in that church. And that's, I think that's exactly why the Pilgrims came over, right? They came over from the British Isles, right? I'm not getting mixed up here.
Yeah, they wanted to they wanted to basically have greater reform that was less Roman, and to King James's credit, he did allow them to peacefully leave rather than forcing them out. But yeah, they just basically came to an agreement that the Pilgrims would do their thing here, and that he would continue his thing over there in England.
Previously.
Sorry, say again.
Oh, did King James establish the Anglican Church, or did he inherit it, established previously?
He inherited it. Yeah, he inherited it. It was Henry VIII who actually established it. And as a result, a lot, like for example,
that makes
King
sense
James.
because I was going to say it makes sense because it seems like King James is much.
I think we're having some roboting problems.
Okay, let me risk touching it more then. And I'm not sure if it is my antenna because it seems like it goes up. Moment there. Does it seem better for a moment here?
I don't know if you guys are able to hear me at the moment, but I've not been able to hear anything for quite some time. I know Nicholas did leave for a moment, but I didn't hear anything much before then, so I'm not sure if the audience can hear me. Honesty or I just heard something.
It's like I'm a ghost.
I heard that pretty well, actually, so maybe we might be getting somewhere. Honesty says she can hear me.
Because I'm touching the end.
Well, and while we're trying to fix this, I do just want to say, friends, of course, we do apologize. Usually I'm actually the one who's having the issues here, so I guess it's somewhat of a breath of fresh air. I say that tongue in cheek, of course. But we'll obviously be getting this figured out here in no time. The curse of internet issues because of a derogatory term towards. I assume that's some kind of a, I don't know, an inside joke or reference or something. I don't get it. Let's see here. Not really much I could preempt per se. So a couple things though that I will talk about while we're waiting for everything to get all situated and such. And by the way, perhaps if you guys would like, maybe save some prayers or something for internet. Obviously, Lord is sovereign; He can do whatever He wants. I want to go ahead and say that one of the things that I know that was going to be brought up here was the localized association with certain members of the quote community. And of course, nobody is shocked by who I'm talking about, right? But it would be Smokey Saint. And a whole bunch of people obviously continuously being associated with Smokey. I had a brief comment interaction with Kenny Rhodes today. That to an extent was, don't get me wrong. Obviously, I've said what I've said, and some of it was said in anger, but most of it I did genuinely mean. But it was a pleasant exchange. I did have the ability to at least apologize to Dr. Kenny for not giving him the due respect of an elder, which I have had people who even agreed with me, let me know that I should have done that. And so that was nice. But what we ended up talking about was this whole Smokey association and how I see him as almost propping up Smokey's ministry as well as many others. And I put air quotes in front of ministry. Kenny had brought up.
And you mean many others propping him up, right? Am I here?
One more time?
I interrupted
you.
Yeah,
I hear you perfectly.
Okay, I said, and you mean many. What?
No, go ahead. We just talking over each other. That's the only problem. Go ahead.
And you said that when you said many others as well, you mean many others propping up Smokey rather than Kenny propping up many other ministries.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah. So it's many others propping up Smokey.
Exactly. And I had told him, I was like, look, I don't know what you know, Dr. Kenny, but I can tell you that a month before you ever appeared on Kenny's channel, I and two others, which was Nicholas and Ryan, were on Smokey's channel publicly on what was known as the examination of Smokey Saint, talking to him as brothers using scripture. And at that point, we had already been talking to him about this 3 months. And you still wouldn't even come into the picture for another month. So, and the point just being like, while I understand, you're saying that there's things going on behind the scenes and you have been in this ministry for quite some time and all that other kind of stuff. It's like, you are you are, what I was trying to explain to him is you are coming to this late, right? By the time you were here, we were
I'm
already.
sorry, I just need a. I'm sorry, I need a moment. I gotta block Mr. Lizard. He's just has no Christian compatibility, and yeah. So I'm just gonna block you from this channel, Mr. Lizard. You're a distraction for this channel. Cause let me see. It still has it here on StreamYard. Oh yeah, guilt by association. LOL. Like this is a specific situation for specific reasons. We've talked about it in the past. It's not just some general random thing, And he's just like talking about it as if no details exist, and as if like we're just doing some like weird generalization and stuff. And it's just silly, It's just like, get real, man. It's not just like about your mental games and stuff. Just like get real about what's going on in the real world. The beast coming out of the sea, that your church is the whore of Revelation that drinks the blood of the saints, and just get real about trusting Christ instead of trusting the whore and trusting your own fascination and stuff. And, so yeah, maybe I'll see you around elsewhere, but this is my personal channel at this point. And yeah, we're just not doing that anymore. So now let's get back into reality, not just our own, And yeah, so sorry about the interruption, but that was just really annoying because it's like,
no, it's fine.
Yeah, I do understand random guilt by association is not fair, but when someone absolutely should not have a ministry and then you condone and support their ministry. So Smokey is blatant deception to cover up a crime he committed against, well, we don't know if he committed it, but that he's been charged with against a teenage girl. We don't know how old he was when he committed the crime. We don't know if he committed it, but we know he's charged with it and that he's lying to everyone. And you can't have someone just accepted in ministry and in a Christian community who's blatantly lying to everyone. You just can't do that. Oh, apparently Mr. Lizard is like the sock account type. So, I mean, I don't know if they're sure if he's the sock account type or if he uses other accounts for legitimate reasons.
Well, and just to say, so I was going to ignore it, but since we did mention it, I just want to say briefly. I know that there's a bunch of.
She already hit him for me. Very nice. Thank you.
Well, I was just going to say, I know there's a bunch of people out there who are saying this whole, derogatory Christian is a derogatory term that was meant as an insult. That's not true, and it's also actually like hilarious. It literally means a follower of Christ. I don't know why you think the word follower of Christ is derogatory. However, if you're offended,
well, it means a slave.
It's because you're not.
It means a slave to Christ, more exactly. Or like, you're his, he owns you. So like there's a similar word for Caesar that like Romans belong to Caesar kind of a thing. Christians belong to Christ. So
either way, the point is just to say, like, if you are not, like, if you're offended at being called a follower of Christ, then maybe it's because you aren't one.
Yeah, I mean, was someone offended by that? Oh,
yeah. Mr. Lizard said he found the word to be derogatory. He finds it funny when people embrace derogatory terms, and he claims to be a Christian. So, I mean, if you find that to be derogatory, that's fine. That's on you.
I do think there is some kind of in the Bible, the first time they're called Christians is by others who mean it as a negative thing or something, or no, there's the first use of the word Christian in the Bible, but I think there's more than nothing to what Mr. Lizard's saying there is what I'm getting at. I don't want to Bible study, but I do think there is something to what he's saying, but also it's like we count it blessing when we're persecuted for his sake, And so like, obviously, if people are trying to persecute us by giving us a label, specifically Christian, or being persecuted for his sake, it makes perfect sense that would be all the more reason to adopt that label. And just the way that, like you say, it's funny that we would embrace something like that. Like, it just shows your head's in a totally different place than where the church's head is at. And the church is in agreement, So That's between you and the church. Or, well, yeah, there's between us and Christ, there's between us and the church. Like, whether or not Smokey's saved is between him and Christ. But whether or not it's okay for people to support and condone the ministry of someone who lies to cover up charges of crime, someone who is also a false teacher, teaching that Jesus' promise of eternal life is not a true promise, but that it may or may not be eternal when he gives you life. And then also the way he's extremely abusive with people. I know that people disagree about teachings, right? But as far as the way he's abusive to people and the way he's lying to cover up his charge, either one of those disqualifies him and makes it unacceptable for anyone who is up to church standard to be doing anything with him, to be doing stuff with him in ministry, is, in a public teaching type ministry or something, I mean, if he wants to donate to the poor or something, I know that he's been involved in that, something that some people did with that. I'm not going to say refuses money necessarily, but like, as far as saying that his voice has enough merit to be engaged with and all that, he's disqualified completely from that for either of two reasons. And if someone's going to overlook either of those two things, then I can't affiliate with them publicly, because then I'm affiliating light with darkness, and it's kind of vilifying to Christ to be like, this darkness is somehow included in Christianity. It's really bad. So yeah, for either of the two reasons, it's extremely important. It's mandatory according to the scripture that we're not allowed to associate with Smokey. Now we're not going to have the death penalty for breaking the scripture because we're not under the law, but according to the scripture, we are not allowed to associate with Smokey. That's a scriptural fact. So
but real quick though, I do just want to point out, just because I understand that there's there is some association with potentially being labeled by outsiders first, but the whole Christian was originally a derogatory term thing. That comes from liberal circles that wish to deny the church as a whole to try and create their own new age religious groups around Jesus. It actually started gaining popularity only in the recent decades. But if you just look at like the Strong's Concordance, for example, or even like etymology.com, all it means is a follower of Christ. And when people were referring to Christians as this, the only thing that they were saying is, it's like saying, it's no different than saying like Demetrios, for example, right? Which is a name that we have today. There's others. I just can't think of them because that one's an easy one to remember because the name Demetrius. But you know what I mean? All it's saying is just to say that one follows. And the reason that's important is because there is a lot of people who do like to associate themselves with these weird little cultic things. Like, for example, those guys, they didn't have J's in the English language. That's another, or back in those days, right? It's another one of those examples where it's like, it's pedantic, but people like to attach themselves to these falsehoods and create a huge theology about it. Yeah. And then they deceive people.
It is nice to call him Jesus and pronounce the Greek name properly, or to go to the Hebrew name, because we don't call Jose Josie or Juan Juan or anything, So I mean, so now I'm being pedantic, very much so.
Well, that's all right. To an extent, I guess.
But I'm not making pedantic a religious like thing or whatever. I'm just saying like, yeah, I like it though. It's good to pronounce his name right.
Right.
So I know I'm kind of distracting from the point you're making. I'm sorry, but yeah, I don't know if Lizard's still here, if he ran out of socks, but just the last thing I just want to mention is that, like, we're still mentioning the whole thing with Smokey because it's a problem in the representation of Christ that people are overlooking the scandal or overlooking his abusive treatment. And there are some people who now, because of his abusive treatment, it seems that they're going to disassociate with him depending on how they follow through. And I encourage them in that, if it's because they're being obedient to God. Oh, it's just a troll, Kevin. Don't worry about it. But if they're, he's from back in the drama days and he doesn't get that. This isn't a drama place anymore, which is what I'm addressing now because I'm mentioning Smokey, but I have a responsibility to that because I had so much to do with when his channel wasn't as strong. And
Well,
when
that's
it
the
was
point I was trying to make.
under threat of coming to an end, I helped him save his channel, you know?
Yeah, and that was even part of the point I was trying to make to Dr. Kenny earlier today. Is like I was trying to tell him, it's like, look, like I don't mean this disrespectfully in any way, but by the time you showed up on the scene, which is 9 months ago now, right? Meaning on this particular scene with Smokey, we had already been talking to Smokey about this stuff 4 months behind the scenes as brothers, and for a full month in public still as brothers. And if you just look at what Matthew 18 says, I mean, you approach someone, then you approach someone with witnesses, then you approach someone to the church. If they still refuse, then you disfellowship. Like we can do nothing more than what we've done, right? If we're going to be consistent with the scriptures, and I think people need to take that more seriously than they are.
Yeah, and like here's another thing is like I behaved mistakenly when I hung out with Smokey, and then I've repented, but Mr. Lizard's just like in whatever agenda he's in at the moment in each moment, you know. So that's neither here nor there. It's not my concern. But yeah, I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about, Mr. Lizard. So I may have something I need to apologize to you for from back then. I don't intend to find out what it is, though. So if I owe you an apology, then I am sorry for what I did. Yeah. So yeah. So now it's just a matter of like it's just a matter of voicing what's right, and if people want to listen, they will, or if they don't, they won't. Because now I associate specifically with people that, because of agreement in Christ, I get along with them more easily, you know? And a lot of people I didn't get along with because I wasn't behaving well with Smokey, or that I had a lot of tension with at moments because of that, you know? Like Honesty Angel here is someone who there was tension. That was my fault. And we might have had other tension, just like disagreeing about things and being honest with each other, which is fine. But yeah, and thank you, Honesty, for helping me out. You're not obligated to like be there and be on it, so nothing to apologize for, but I appreciate you. Yeah, and there's a lot of people that I was like, okay, I gotta back up and give them like a whole second chance, because when you make it hard on people, then you can't expect them to like necessarily behave the best towards you, so then you can get a bad impression of them. I did, because I made it hard on people. I could see their worst side and get a bad impression of them. That's not really fair, you know?
Well,
So,
of course, one of the difficult things, if I may, was just that Smokey was good at giving us a mixed bag, right? So he would attack Christians, but then he'd also attack non-Christians. So you'd get like, you were never really sure if Smokey was crossing that line or not, right? Like, for example, he would go after like Ryan the Presbyterian, and, you know, and here he is now, you know, he's taken over one of Praise's old channels, and he's using it to try and latch himself onto a whole bunch of different movements, and nobody cares, thank God. But
so, wait, someone's taken over one of Praise's old channels? Who?
Ryan the Presbyterian was given Praise's old 1,500 subscriber channel, and now he's made it his own, and he's made it his most recent videos are one attacking you and me and a couple others, and then one talking something about Jill. And
okay,
the thing
well,
is,
that's enough of hearing about the drama, people. I mean, no, I don't mean. I just mean like. So sorry. Go on.
well, the only point was just to be so Smokey would go after someone like him, right? And then he would go after someone like, for example, you know, Praise, who I don't think everything he went after Praise was illegitimate, but Praise obviously was not doing the same things that Ryan is doing, right? And the point was just kind of like that made it a mixed bag, right? And then you throw Rage in there, who's an atheist, and you throw P. Mars in there, who's a troll, and then you throw Janet Duttridge in there, who appears to just be a Christian sister, and all these other people, right? And you'd have such a mixed bag that, like, I feel like it makes people think, oh, I remember that one time he went after this person who I feel like was a heretic, And so I can ignore all these other times he went after people, you know what I mean? And it's kind of a clever
for me, it was a lot deeper because I was there with him day after day, and it was like, you know, from what I hear, it's gotten like a lot worse with like really no holding back. Like he had to hold back when I was around, you know, to some extent. But I don't want to get into trying to dissect it and make sense of the nuance of it all because it's like an endless can of worms of nuances to like explain what it was like from my perspective. So, and that's the reason I've never done a very good explanation of it. Is there's just so much, you know, because this whole church meeting is because like I want what's best for the church, and I wanted what was best for the church then against like complacency and heresy of different kinds and stuff. And it's ironic. It's ironic that my motives for working with Smokey were just irony. So I have no excuse. But so I think we've addressed that enough. So the people who are probably this one guy, are you saying that because the Bible commands that we not fellowship with Smokey, that I'm not forgiving Smokey because I'm obeying the Bible? Or am I misunderstanding what you're saying here? Because yeah, we're really just trying to close that topic. I mean, anyone who doesn't know better about Smokey right now, then that's their problem. Am I still here with you, CJ?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Because it says we have 0 viewers. I was like, did I lose internet or something? But okay, so let's try to move on from this topic. So we've been stuck on this topic for a while. So yeah, so it does seem there's some people who, after the last drama thing that Smokey did in response to Graham and I saying some stuff that we should say because Smokey is Smokey, you know. I think because Graham and I were saying things that we should say, the truth persevered in that situation, and there's some people parting ways with Smokey now. But from what I've heard, they're parting ways with him just because he's abusive. But when you're covering up a criminal charge against a teenage girl with lies, we need to have a standard amongst us Christians that's better than that standard. Overlooking that stuff is like a Democrat or a Marxist or even a Republican, right? But it's like the world, and we are not like the world. We cannot be like the world. We can't just overlook that. So I really appreciate like Smokey's abusive to people. Cut it off for that reason, I agree. But equally, he's lying to cover up a relevant criminal charge. So cut him off for that reason. So it's either reason and both, right? But if only one reason matters to you and the other one doesn't, then I have a concern for you because of the reason that doesn't matter to you. So that's just my, I'll call it an exhortation, calling for something, you know? So I'm calling for both things to matter. Yeah. So for me, that's wrapping that topic up. Do you need to wrap up anything, CJ, or do we got it?
I would just simply say to end, there is no fruit to this ministry, quote unquote. Jesus says, by your fruits you shall know them. And it's funny, Smokey always tries to mention things. For example, he'll say that, oh, well, you know, he got Jen Aldrich to stop being a whore. But of course, that's not true at all. You know, and obviously, you know, I think he exaggerates what Jen Aldrich does, but the point is the things that she was doing, namely dressing in a way that we would consider provocative as Christians, she still does. It's not like that changed anything. Or he said that he made praise into a Trinitarian, but praise apparently is thinking about not being a Trinitarian anymore.
Yeah, because apparently praise's Trinitarianism was just conforming to Smokey, and I don't want to.
That's sort of my point.
Yeah, I don't want to get all into talking about praise necessarily. I don't want this to become like we're policing the whole community and airing everything out. That's not what I'm trying to do. So if you think that needs to be done, then we can. But I know that's like where the side chat's naturally taking things. I don't necessarily just want to go where side chat takes us. We did want to address Smokey, and we got a little lost with side chat, but we made it work. But
Right. That wasn't my point to dig out everything. My point is just simply to say that like there's no fruit in this ministry, and these examples of so-called fruit aren't right. He uses P Mars, but that failed. He used Brett Keane, and that failed. He used Praise, that failed. He used Jen Aldridge, that failed. So what fruit is there actually? And if you don't have any after a year here on YouTube, right, a year here in quote unquote ministry, then I think that in and of itself should be problematic for people. And that's not even including the viciousness or the lying or the charges or anything like that. So I would just tell people to pay attention to those kinds of things, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure exactly like how we do measure fruit, say for like me or you or Graham exactly either. So I'm not sure how practically applicable that necessarily is for various people. But if you don't mind me saying so,
I guess I would say I think the fruit, for me personally, I think it speaks for itself. I don't really have any necessity to like list everything, but I think everybody's aware of the kinds of, and I'll just say this much, Smokey's favorite insult for me personally was that I lost credibility with all the big names. I invite you to check out my channel, and my only point in saying that is just, I think the fruit speaks for itself, right? We don't need to brag on ourselves. We don't need to list, well, I did this and I did that thing, because everybody's aware of it already. Those who are speaking to us privately are speaking to us privately. Those who we've helped, they've already told us we've helped them. Frankly, I'm confident enough in these people watching me as frequently as they do that I'll just say, if I need anybody to speak up, I'll just ask for somebody to speak up, and we'll probably find it, if not on this live chat, in the comment section later. The point just being, as Proverbs 27 says, we don't need to be in the business of bragging about ourselves, because the fruit speaks for itself.
Yeah, and I guess in a vague sense, I get the idea. Like, yeah, but it is rather a vague thing. I don't know how to make clean distinctions with it. But here, I just want to mention to you, Kevin Blah, that yeah, praise is praise. So if you don't want to deal with someone like praise, don't deal with praise. But I'm not gonna, I would be really sad if you invested effort trying to like change things that aren't necessarily going to change, So yeah, so as far as that goes, but and that's just not to unpack anything about praise or anything like that, but I just want to give you advice, Kevin, that like these different spaces and different people each have their merits and shortcomings, and there's a lot of people offering truth of Christ around here. So it's not like you can just go in there and offer the truth of Christ, and praise is just so much one of Christ's sheep that he'll just listen to your voice in the correct spiritual way. And there's no just easy solution, because it's like there was once upon a time that I advised praise against cussing a long time ago when I was pretty new to the community, and I was actually leaving a live stream, and I was like, I don't want to be like that guy who's like annoying, but also I think if I just went in there and casually was like, I don't think there should be cussing like this, I don't think Jesus wants that, and I think it would go okay. I'll go in there and just, I won't like try to change anything or try to fight or anything. I'll just go in there and speak the honesty about it and see how they respond. And everyone thanked me, and praise cleaned up his act, and his act was cleaned up for like 6 months straight. And all I meant was just to like be like, this is what Jesus would want. And I was glad to see it go well, Well, eventually we found out that like it wasn't really that. It was more that praise. It was more like a social pressure that praise took my words as. I didn't mean them as that, but that was kind of how he took it, you know? So, like, it became a socially expedient for him to not cuss for 6 months. And then when Smokey and I were making things difficult on people, something happened that was like, broke it down for praise. And he didn't have a foundation of not cussing in Christ. So as soon as he was like, separate from me, I apparently was the motive for not cussing, and suddenly he was like cussing like a sailor again. So let's just say there is an issue for him that instead of when he changes for the better or makes up his mind or something, instead of that having its foundation in Christ, which is a sure foundation, it seems to usually have its foundation in another person. So if that relationship changes, then his perspective changes. I don't know what to do about it. I encourage praise, and I would encourage him in what's good and discourage him in what's not good. And I've reached out to him a couple times just to just to be like, I think I have a bit of friendly advice to offer you. So here it is, kind of a thing, once or twice, And him and I are friends, but we can't really like associate ministry together because I don't find him easy to work with in the agreement that is in Christ, So like, to me, he would be fitting as an audience member, not as someone I would want in the live stream with me talking to the audience. That's my personal perspective. But then, I don't know what use God has for praise in his shortcomings and stuff that, all I know is to do my best discernment and to encourage other people in their best according to Christ. And we all have shortcomings, and God's using us all. So even though it's right for me to advise that praise be an audience member instead, God used Pharaoh. He used, who was it? The Amalekites?
Which instance are you speaking of?
The instance where God uses them to punish Israel, and then he punishes them for what they did to Israel also.
I think that's the Assyrians.
Yes, the Assyrians. Yeah, and I'm not trying to categorize praise as an enemy or anything like that. Just examples of God using things we might not expect him to use. So I don't know what's going on, right? All I can say is my honesty. So I know I was like, let's not get stuck on that, and then I did. But yeah, so if you don't mind, brother, I do want to finish reading this Globalist article about David Platt. So I was giving some background. Oh, I got to share it again. So I was giving some background about David Platt. I will go ahead and read it again real quick because I think it'll literally only take about a minute to read a couple short paragraphs. So for anyone who wasn't here before my internet dropped and I started this, last week I said that David Platt is a Marxist infiltrator. And then a couple hours later, in Sal's side chat, our brother Sandy Pigeon put up this article because Sal goes to David Platt's church, and Sandy Pigeon did go, but he eventually left. I'm going to put it this way because of 1 Timothy chapter 6, right? Yeah, chapter 6, 1 Timothy chapter 6, which says that like if people, teach that slaves have a right to be covetous, then such a person is proud, knowing nothing but doting about strifes and contentions of words that questions and strifes of contentions of words that lead to covetousness and revilings and vilification. And, so all the sorts of sins that later in the chapter it mentions are the result of the love of money. So Oh yeah, so the woke church basically, right? Like our ancestors were slaves, so we're not as rich people. So therefore there's an injustice going on. The Bible says if someone teaches like that they have vilified God's teaching. You can find all this in 1 Timothy chapter 6. They have vilified God's teaching, and we are to turn away from them. So, or you might find it as the word blaspheme. Blaspheme is to vilify. So, I just sometimes try to make it like clear the literal meaning, because some people might just think of it as a religious word. But in fact, sometimes the word blaspheme is translated as slander because it's talking about slandering people rather than blaspheming God. It's actually the same word, though. Anyway, so yeah, so I was saying that David Platt is a Marxist infiltrator for reasons. And then just a couple hours later, I went to Sal's stream, and this link was in the side chat. Globalist evangelicals, how deep is the deceit? Key leaders in the evangelical movement have no hesitation in promoting the global goals of an antichrist world system. David Platt is/has become one of the more obvious and shameless. Reverend Thomas Littleton. So that's who wrote it. I don't know anything about him. But this is verifying what I was already sure of, which makes it very easy for me to read it and think it rings true. And there are some links to dig into, and I dug a little bit into one of them. So I'll go over that briefly. So he wrote it 7/18/2021, so not too long ago, a couple weeks. David Platt is the popular pastor who heads the radical and secret church brands, among other movements. Platt is currently the pastor of McLean Bible Church in Virginia. He became popular as a pastor of the troubled church at Brook Hills in Birmingham, Alabama, when its founding pastor became embroiled in a moral failure. Platt's rise to the senior pastor's position of the 4,200-member Southern Baptist megachurch made him the youngest megachurch pastor in history, according to the New York Times. So I guess he's probably about my age now. I'm not sure. Late 30s. Platt star fade. Well, I'm 37, so that's halfway between mid and late. Platt's star faded in his short and troubled time as head of the SBC International Missions Board. So this is what I was talking about when it cut me out, right? Was that the SBC is the largest denomination in the United States, which is a major center of Christianity, even though that's it seems to be changing, because it seems like it's going to become a center of wokeness instead, and the center of Christianity will be somewhere else, you know? Because wokeness, it's like the new Rome, you know? It's just the new thing that claims to be Christianity, but it just straight up is not Christianity. So so it seems like that's might be where the mega church of the United States is headed. Then all of us conservatives are going to be in we're going to be a completely separate category. Whereas now it's like we're different, but we're kind of in the same category. That's changing fast. So the International Missions Board of the SBC. So this is the largest denomination in the United States. So one of the largest Christian sects, you know, and the scare quotes is because I'm going to mention Rome here, right? Because Romanism is obviously larger than the SBC. Maybe some sort of orthodoxy is and stuff. Then I was talking about Anglicanism. We got on a historical tangent, which we'll skip this time. And I'm saying that like now that, you know, Christians in England can choose between Bible Christianity or Anglicanism. I think Anglicanism has gone the Romanist category of just not being Christian. I especially think that because of N.T. Wright. He's a progressivism Trojan horse. And reminds me of something I saw. Pine Creek left a comment on Examining Evolution. You guys should subscribe to her channel. It was actually on her other channel called Bread of Life. But I think she does such a good job breaking down. I'm going to grab a link for her while I'm talking about her for the Examining Evolution channel. because and I haven't checked out the Bread of Life channel yet, so I can't recommend it yet anyway. But Examining Evolution, she does like a lay person doing a good job of reviewing the science in a scientific way, which means that like lay people can understand it. But she also does a good job, unlike a lot of the more lay young Earth creationists who don't necessarily, you know. So yeah, just awesome channel. So I'm gonna. This is a really cool video where they thought they discovered evolution rapidly happening in lizards. And then, so I'll link the video. That's how you can get to her channel. They thought evolution was rapidly happening in lizards. And it turned out that, I'm talking slow because I'm typing and I can't multitask. Okay. And they admitted that it could be epigenetic, where some other way, the same lizards, their digestive system changed. So it wasn't that it evolved handing it down to the next generation, but it's that their own digestive system individually changed. So then they tested a group of these lizards, I think 15 of them, or no, I think it was for 15 weeks. And after 15 weeks of only eating fruit, they had the same change in their digestive system, proving that it wasn't evolution, but rather they were already designed by God. Now, I'm, of course, putting in my presuppositions all of a sudden. So I'm not saying it proves they were designed by God, but that's what it actually does go with, right? So they were actually designed by God so that if they needed to eat only fruit, their digestive system would adapt. It's pretty amazing, right? And this may be the answer to, like, how was there no death before the flood? Lions eating fruit, really? I don't know. I mean, these, you know, we have a lot to discover. So maybe they were. And then it was Sandy who put this that I was mentioning. Let me see. The SBC split. I'm just going to trust that what Sandy has to add is good. Oh, he's 42. Okay, so he is 5 years older than me. So I didn't see that Sandy heard me talking about him, I guess, that he put this article on the side chat that we're reading now. The SBC has split in a socio-cultural sense. There has arisen the Conservative Baptist Network, who almost won the president's seat from the woke side of the SBC. Yeah, so there is sort of hope in, well, the thing is there's so much financial scandal in the SBC, and it seemed that even the conservatives didn't really care about that during the convention. So that gives me very little hope for, I'll let Sandy Pigeon comment on what I was saying about the lizards. But yeah, that gives me very little hope for the SBC, unfortunately, that even when they were paying attention to everything else, they didn't care about straight up theft, right? So unfortunately. So we'll continue reading the article. I know when I mentioned that other channel, because that's a ministry I wanted to do personally, was to the like lay person side of evolutionism, but I don't have time to do it all. And just a few days after I told Standing I wanted to do that, he told everyone about this channel. And then I was like, okay, she can do it instead, I guess. And then I don't have to do it. So I thank God for her. So for me, my YEC ministry, as far as the stuff that's easier for lay people to understand, is just recommending her channel. That's what I do. And I was talking about that because there was, Pine Creek was in her side chat saying that fundamentalists and YEC Christians are more likely to stop being Christians than progressive Christians. So therefore, we're turning people away from Jesus. And then he had a smile, which I'm quite sure he was using as a smirk, a smile emoji, because he's such a creep, right? It's like, it's less.
Do you have any curiosities? Do you have any like anything to back that up, or do you just say it?
Oh, he said there's a statistic, and I think he must have seen a statistic somewhere at some time. Now, I mean, it could be a statistic from the 90s for all we know, right? I mean, but here's the thing: is like it's just nonsense, because his smirk shows that he knows it's nonsense, and he's such a creep. It's not like Pine Creek; it's more like Pine Creep, And he is so creepy. He gives off this serial killer vibe all the time. And the name Pine Creek has a serial killer vibe to it too. And he's just so sleazy. Like, it's so slimy. Ugh. Anyway, he's such a slime ball. It's crazy. But so that smirk, right? He knows what he's doing. Progressive Christians are not Christians. That's just a fact. They trust the world instead of Jesus. That's why, all of their beliefs are based on what the world will let them believe, and none of them are submitted to Jesus at all, because it's just a consistent thing about them that their trust is in the world instead of Jesus. And there could be exceptions, but I don't think we need to stress the exceptions. It's like it's extremely dangerous for people to be swept up in a spirit of putting your trust in the world while people insist it's in Jesus instead, And Pine Creek knows that, or at least he knows that we think that. That's what the smirk is about, right? Because he knows that, like, from our perspective, his argument's nonsense. Like, non-Christians are less likely to stop being Christians than Christians are. Like, it doesn't even make sense, And of course, they're less likely to be deconverted because they're already converted to the world. So the world's not going to deconvert them. And then many progressive Christians, they do convert to real Christianity. They do become saved. But according to the stats that Pine Creek is looking at, those people were just Christians who remained Christians, right? So the whole thing's just nonsense, because the way the world measures Christianity has nothing to do with what Christianity actually is. But he was just being such a creep. And unfortunately, I don't remember how this inspired that, because I really wanted to promote Examining Evolution's channel, so that really distracted me. But I don't regret that distraction, because I think Standing for Truth is a great channel for science technicality and like to really fight the fight of the debate, right? But to like sort of bridge it to lay people so that they can understand these points easily and on a level where they can actually win individual little arguments with like their atheist friends who think like evolution science is more than a joke, because that's what she does, is she'll take a specific scientific point and just address that one point carefully. It's really awesome, but she does it as a layperson. It's a really awesome channel. So Platt star faded in his short and troubled time as head of the SBC's International Mission Board. So my point here is all this international powerness and how suspicious that is. During which he made a sudden move into another pastorate at McLean Bible Church well before his exit from the International Mission Board. So McLean Bible Church's mission was to evangelize world leaders from the DC area, and they were doing a good job of it. And of course, there's nothing that Marxism could hate more than that. So David Platt's job was to come in and alter the mission, which is why they affiliated against their constitution. They affiliated with the SBC in order to send like money and resources just in the direction of SBC corruption, when it's the constitution states that for their specific church, all those resources are supposed to evangelize the specific DC area, because that's a world hub. So that's a good way to evangelize the world. But of course, Marxism hates that. So they had to send, we know for sure, because of who Marxists are and what they do, that they attempted to infiltrate McLean Bible Church. So knowing for sure that they attempted to infiltrate McLean Bible Church, as a matter of how the game is played, it would be extremely naive to think they did not make an attempt. Let's ask ourselves, did they succeed, or did McLean Bible Church somehow defend against it? And we see clearly that they succeeded, that David Platt is a Marxist infiltrator. And, we're at war, so we can't wait for proof before we make our best informed assessment of what the enemy is doing and respond accordingly. We can't wait for our enemy to confess while we're in a state of war. So now Platt is facing another set of massive controversies, as McLean has lost 40% of its membership in a recent split. And I think that's a very lowballed number, but I'm not sure about the distinction between attendees and membership. So lost 40% of their membership in a recent split, which has set off a war with longtime members over his embrace of the false social justice and so-called woke gospel. And he's saying it's so-called woke, but the writer of the article agrees it's a false gospel. The gospel is not in quotes because he is saying it's a false gospel. Platt has bigger problems still. Bigger issues loom as Platt shows his globalist alignments. Platt has sold many books and study guides for his various brands like Radical and Secret Church. His first book in the Radical series was featured on the New York Times bestseller list, which has become little more than the fruit of clever marketing strategies based on massive pre-publishing purchases by authors and their entities. Okay, I actually want to see if we can get past this stuff's relevant, but okay, no, I gotta read this. Note as well that David Platt gained a position in the Lausanne movement. I don't know how to pronounce that. Lausanne movement in 2015, while still heading the International Mission Board as the chair of Lausanne's Theology Working Group. More on Lausanne's endorsement of rabid, globalist, sustainable goals, which are intended to lead to global currency and global governance, among other godless outcomes. David Platt's upcoming Radical Intensive Conference planned for McLean Bible Church in September provides troubling insights into his branding's sources and goals as part of the mission strategy. These sourcing partners will be familiar to anyone following the global sustainability goals of the United Nations and the economic and pandemic policies of organizations like the World Economic Forum. Radical Intensive. Radical Intensive is a 2-day event for lead pastors, decision-making senior leaders, and their teams to encourage and equip you to lead your church to make disciples of all nations, particularly in places of most urgent spiritual and physical need. So this again goes along with infiltrating McLean Bible Church to take it to a different mission, which another mission is okay, but not for McLean Bible Church because they're poised for their mission, and they, made it permanent in their constitution. Purpose. Learn how your church can reimagine resources for the sake of the lost, specifically the unreached. Receive detailed discipleship resources to expose, engage, and empower your congregation in Great Commission work. Discover biblically faithful and practically effective ways your church can play a part in making the gospel known in some of the hardest to reach places on the planet. Gain a vision for how to shift the idea of existing mission fields to mission forces, mobilizing your current reached world mission partners to the unreached. Connect the other like-minded church leaders who are seeking to rectify the great imbalance. So there's this great imbalance. We'll see what it is in a minute here. For those considering the Radical Intensive, we encourage you to read about Radical's mission, statement of faith, and core values. Reality behind the feel-good message on gospel mission. The Radical Intensive links to several entities related to the radical research. Okay, so this is where we have a very direct connection. His Radical Intensive, this is David Platt's specific thing, is linked to this stuff. So, yeah, I mean, if you're okay with that, then that's your problem, and you'll see what the stuff is in a minute. So right now, I'm not saying you don't know whether or not you're okay with it because you haven't looked at it yet. But we're about to. I've looked at Stratus some, and it's creepy. Which hopefully, when I show it to other people, they'll think it's creepy too. Otherwise, it's really creeping in, right? That's the successful creep in, is when you don't know it's creepy. The Radical Intensive links to several entities related to the radical research, data, and partner organizations. Note, Stratus Earth. That's the one I started looking at. And let's read a bit about Stratus, and we'll stop there. So if there's more to talk about, we'll talk about it another week. And I'll pull up the Stratus website real quick after we read at least some of what's said about it here. These partners clearly and brazenly source the information and data they are working to hard sell through Platt and the Radical brand from radical, political, left-leaning, globalist entities. So they source what they're hard selling through Platt and Radical. They source it from radical political left-leaning globalist entities. Stratus mission data reimagined. Stratus asserts that it seeks to address the great imbalance. Stratus aims to address the great imbalance by helping the church identify the world's most urgent needs so that it can reallocate its resources more strategically. The vast majority of missions resources go to people and places already reached by the gospel, while only 3% of missionaries and 1% of missions money are deployed among the unreached. This is the great imbalance. And notice that this is, while it sounds good, just notice how useful it is for people who want to strategize on a global level of influence. You see, let me just say what's going on here. They want to reach people with a false gospel to prevent them from being open to the real gospel. Then if you want to give them the real gospel, they're offended that you don't think they have the gospel yet. So I know how great it sounds, but yeah, as a result, there are more people without access to the gospel today than a decade ago. Stratus seeks to equip the global church with fresh vision to accomplish the Great Commission by addressing some of the factors that perpetuate the great imbalance. We hope this tool allows the church to better understand what steps will be required to overcome the barriers that prevent needs from being met, spurring informed and collaborative missions strategy. Okay, so let's just go to, I think I did stratus.com and got there pretty easily, if I remember right. No, this is something else. Is there a link here? Stratus.earth, okay. Are you still there, brother?
Yes.
Thank you for your patience. I know this is a long thing. But so this is what this looks like, a groundbreaking tool for the Great Commission. Here is the Stratus Index, and I think this is a sample. I don't think this is because this is a sample of what Stratus is, so if you sign up and can use it. But it's got the Stratus Index, I guess. The redder a place is, the more they need the gospel is I don't know what category this is, so I don't know what we're supposed to be looking at. But it says Stratus equips the global church to identify country-level needs with nuance and specificity, prioritize areas of high spiritual and physical need, match its resources and expertise to corresponding needs, make informed missional strategies for allocating resources. So why Stratus? Stratus aims to address the great imbalance by helping the church identify the world's most urgent needs. So it can, okay, we already read that. But, oh, here's really creepy, right? Stratus Index, spiritual, political, natural, social, developmental. They have all this categorization. They're getting all organized for influencing, right? And then, okay, data sources. Check this out. So this is where everything sounded good until we go to who's going to feed this data to be the one sort of puppeting anyone who's listening to this website, right? And this is on the screen, right? Yeah, okay. So who's that going to be? Central Intelligence Agency, Department of the State. I'm naming ones that I think people around here know enough about to have some concern about it, or at least that I know enough to know. Anyway, whatever. So you can check out the whole list for yourself. In fact, I can just zoom in, and you guys will get a better look as we go. Except I don't want that thing there. Oh, now it's doing some weird thing, so never mind. The website's too fancy for that. Okay, Central Intelligence Agency, Department of State of the United States of America. We have here the World Bank, the World Health Organization. That looks like the UN emblem to me.
You talking about?
I don't know what Visions of Humanity is, but it sounds horrible. Yes, brother.
Never mind. Continue. I'm kind of just. It was going to be an irrelevant comment, honestly.
Global Terrorism Index is kind of scary because it's like, gather, the protest at the Capitol was an insurrection, but months and months of constant terrorism is not even terrorism. So it's like, who are they gonna say are terrorists? Like, that's scary, OPEC,
Right.
World Economic Forum. And then I don't remember what this Joshua Project thing is, but I've seen it recently and it's suspicious and bad. I don't know if I saw it through this or through something else. So I just vaguely remember it's suspicious and bad. I have to learn things twice before I'm ready to teach them. So that's something I have to look into a second time, sort of a thing. So yeah, anyway, this is a tool. They're trying to offer a tool supposedly for the church, right? But this is like docent research group. If you don't know about docent research group yet, let me, I'll put this link in the description to this 30 Pieces of Silver article. By the description, I mean the side chat. So 30 Pieces Silver. And then the other one that I've got to link. What was I just thinking of? Let me see. We're down here looking at all this stuff, saying it's dang it, there's something else. There's something else that's got to be linked here too. That true. So OPEC, World Economic Forum, Joshua Project. So let's talk about the Marxist infiltration. And I was saying docent research group. Okay. So check this out. I'll go back to DuckDuckGo first. If I just put it in the top, it'll have it go through Bing. So Protestia, docent, with some spelling correct, research group. This is extremely important. This is just a blatant Marxist infiltration. They've been writing sermons for people like Matt Chandler, possibly David Platt, probably J.D. Greer from the Southern Baptist Convention, who was the president recently. Basically, a lot of the woke sermons that you hear are probably from docent, but then also, like, that's only been obvious the past few years, and this infiltration's been going on for at least a decade now, or for about a decade now. So yeah, you've probably enjoyed some of docent research group sermons. That's kind of what I'm trying to get at, is like, or maybe, hopefully the people here have detailed enough of good discernment. I'll say it that way, detailed enough of it, that every time you heard a docent research group sermon, you rejected it. That would be nice. So, okay, I'm not sure what's the best place to go to for just the overall thing of this, because they have a bunch of stuff on this.
Well, I personally am not super sure because the docent group isn't something I'm largely familiar with quite yet. I only got familiar with it because of you bringing it to my attention, which of course was only a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, and the lid that was right when the lid blew off of it. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't know exactly which one is the best one. Oh, maybe Evangelical Dark Web will link the best one. So this guy is a very good place to start. So let's see. Oh yeah, there's just so many of these. So I think this might be the main one. Oh, it came up in a I don't like when it does that, when I don't tell it to be in its own tab, but it comes up in its own tab. So here's what I clicked to was But much shorter version, document for dummies, published here. Okay, so this one will also link you to something shorter, links you to a useful video. So I'm going to call this one in the side chat Protestia. Protestia. And then I'm also Evangelical Dark Web is a YouTube channel. I like the brother really seems to have really good discernment and stuff. So I haven't had a chance to inspect him too closely, but I'm going out on a limb. So you can check him out on YouTube. But here is him just on the internet for whatever that's worth. But that's mostly to link to Docent Research Group, yeah. And it's very heartening for me to like find other people who are willing to go out on a limb with where the evidence is pointing us, rather than like waiting for villains to confess to their villainy as if that's ever going to happen, you know? So, okay. So for me, that was enough sharing about this, that there's more of these globalist connections. And I only started reading that article on David Platt. Then I got distracted by the Stratus thing and I haven't dug in deeper. So, so you guys are caught up with me on that article. There's so much going on right now. I haven't found enough hours in the day to keep up.
Definitely understand that.
So, but that's verifying evidence towards what I already knew based on principles. And one of those principles is that, like, if someone is continuing an action that destroys something, and they just continue to do it and they don't want to do anything to stop it, then it may be that they want to destroy that something, you know? So that's what Jordan Peterson said about Hitler, how he could have won the war possibly, but he decided instead to just run the country into destruction based on his own narcissism, kind of a thing. So so what David Platt's doing, it's like people are being really nice and assuming that like he's failing, but the problem is that he's actually succeeding, right? And so like we could tell his motive by what and this is something that happens when you play like strategic tabletop games and stuff, you know? It's like based on what someone's doing, they're trying to be sly. But if you know the game pretty well, then you know how people think and strategize pretty well, you can see right through their slyness. And then you can see right through their slyness, and what they're doing exposes their strategy, right? So what David Platt is doing exposes things about him. And then the book Radical, too, is basically like the American dream is you need to give up the American dream for the sake of the gospel. But he's living the American dream big time, you know? And that's a common thing with Marxists, is they tell the citizenry to give up everything, but then they're always the elitists who still have everything. And that's why suddenly the elitists are promoting the revolution, and they're getting social justice warriors to blame their innocent neighbors for the crimes of elitists. And they're doing it in service and obedience to the elitists. So it's really pathetic, right? It really is. And we gotta offer to save them from themselves. So if we move forward in politics, it's like the Republicans are just carrying the Democrats' luggage for them anyway, you know, just following a couple years behind. So your vote for a Republican is doing, in the grand scheme of things, is doing absolutely nothing, right? So I think it's about time, rather than voting for, you know, the quote lesser of two evils. I don't want to too directly compare them, right? Because one party has platforms that are somewhat good and conservative and stuff, but then they don't really do their platform, and the other party blatantly is like, hey, do you want to be a baby murderer and hate God? Vote for us. So there is a huge difference between the two. But still, this lesser of two evils thing isn't working. We should offer the actual correct solution and through Christianity, offer that into politics. And then when they don't vote for us, that's just like the people who didn't enter Noah's Ark, you know? But if all we're offering them is republicanism, then we're the watchmen who did not sound the alarm and their blood is on our hands. Do you think that's pretty fair, CJ?
Well, yeah, I do. The only reason I would just say I know that I think that a non-theocratic conservatism is good, and so I don't want people. And I just to be clear, I'm not saying that you are. I'm just actually correcting people who might think the opposite. That we wish to establish a theocracy. God will establish the theocracy, right? And that'll happen when Jesus returns. But
yeah, I fully agree, because if we attempted to establish theocracy, that could be all sorts of problems. So the idea is to establish a government for everyone based on what God teaches about what's being right, so that we can help everyone and save everyone. Of course, they're going to reject it, but we need to offer it.
Exactly. And don't get me wrong, I understand that as when you say it, but I do know a couple people have popped in from time to time who will misunderstand, because we'll say, true conservatism has to be Christian, and they'll say, so what do you mean, like theocracy? And it's like, no, because
yeah, I appreciate you having my back.
Yeah, Thank you. Of course. And so, but and I like that you used republicanism rather than conservatism too, because that almost hammers the point home even harder, right? The Republican Party is just the right wing of the Hydra, you know what I'm saying, or the right head of the Hydra, you could say. So for people to get deceived into thinking that party A, properly represents conservatism, or B, properly represents Christianity, when really they should be properly representing both, but they're not doing either. I think that's something that we need to get out of our heads, because they're toxic. They're pure toxicity at this point.
Okay. So, yeah, I don't think that's much the focus of our episode today. So we'll keep that topic short. And then, and I addressed the claims I made last week that we're already finding more evidence for it. And man, I really got to dig all the way through that article and see just how complete and strong the evidence is. I'm going to take one quick look at it again to let me see. Stratus Earth. I'll just Stratus.
Real quick, I do have to say,
yeah, please.
I personally will have to begin a little bit of the wind down at this point.
Okay.
Obviously, if the show continues on without me, that's perfectly fine. But just to kind of let you know.
Yeah, I'm just taking a look real quick to see if the article stops halfway down and it's all ads or something, or if I really didn't make it all that far. I might have made it through the rest of this article, but it was long for what we were doing at the moment, or maybe I haven't made it through yet. But if I have made it through, I obviously need to review it. So, okay, so I also wanted to encourage that we are the pillar of truth. So, as the church, some spiritual stuff, right? That, oh, you know what, brother? What do you think about, like, the church being too, well, this is going to be, like, somewhat the adultish kind of language, but, like, the church being too sissified, you know? That, like, A.D. Robles did a video, I think yesterday, about how we're all too sissy, including himself. And then today he did one that was supposed to be about how we can stop being as sissy. And Actually, I think there's a specific part of this video, I'm going to find it, that I really want to share with us all. Because there actually are like things we should be doing about these problems. Like, brother, do you know what the one thing that the church should be doing about abortion but is not doing is? Like, it's this blatantly obvious thing that the church needs to be doing about abortion that I don't know if I've ever heard of a single church doing it.
Well, to be honest, I know there's a lot of things. So I'm sure my thing that I thought of is not the same thing that you thought of, but the first thing that comes to my mind immediately is adopting children. It would be nice if the church started adopting children again and helped with the adoption problem.
Yeah, well, that does get done. Apologia Studios does, or Apologia Church does a lot of that, and they started End Abortion Now. That's Jeff Durbin's thing. Yeah, and that's where you should go, is endabortionnow.com as far as checking out the difference between that and the pro-life industry, as Jeff Durbin puts it. And he's been doing godly good work on it and focusing his time on it. So as a fellow member of the body, I'm counting on that member of the body on that front, you know?
Right.
So, yeah, so I'm going to let AD reveal what it actually is when I find it.
And we know it won't continue forever because always the pagans lay
I don't think you pressed the audio on it. Oh wait, never mind. The screen's
No, I'm just trying to find it. So I'm trying to find the right part. Oh yeah, so if you want to go on a mini rant about abortion while I look for this, I'll mute myself.
Well, I won't go on a rant. I'll just let people know, because I know a lot of people do not tune into my Watchdogs. But last night on the Watchdog, we had a little interesting report. There will be 2 cases going to the Supreme Court this October that, if ruled in a certain way, will result in the repeal of Roe v. Wade. Obviously, whether or not that happens, it's God's will. I personally am not incredibly optimistic, I'll be honest. But obviously that we should still be praying for it, talking about it, keeping up with it. And this October, abortion laws in the state of Kentucky and in the state of Mississippi are going to be challenged at the Supreme Court level. And if the court rules in favor of the states, we will see this year the repeal of Roe v. Wade, potentially as late as next year if the case just drags on. But bare minimum, it would be January, February next year. So be praying for that. Absolutely. I know it's unlikely, but it could happen. It is actually within the realm of possibility.
And to keep up on that sort of news, also international sort of news regarding Israel, sometimes the church, sometimes other global politics matters, problems of oppression, just different things on Watchdog News, which is CJ's news channel. Well, that's not the name of the channel, but that's the name of the news show.
I appreciate that.
So that link is now there in the side chat, and I found the spot, so let me share with audio. And yeah, I do want to encourage everyone that it's Christ who sanctifies us, and it's all in Christ. And so how to unsissify yourself by God's grace. That's the name of his video. So yeah, I don't think we're going to have time to dig into that, nor did I prepare scriptures on that or anything. I was just like, I want to come at it from a less rebukeful angle and a more the angle of faith, you know? So I'll just call for reminder that it's in faith, that he empowers us to this. Now, for me, you know, I was devoted to these tasks and also to being kind of lazy and stuff, right? And I gave up that being kind of lazy and stuff thing, which is part of why I messed up on scheduling the thing last night. I think I'm outpacing my brain. It's like I've got to go through this boot camp where I get used to what this stuff is like, and then I'll be ready for the battlefield. But when you're in boot camp, they're breaking you. So I think like I'm breaking myself at the moment some. So I'm kind of a mess, messy or something, because my presentation of stuff's kind of broken at the moment. But point being, yeah, like there's this war thing is just so important. And when Simone Biles quit, that's not the thing I'm talking about, but the left praising her for it, right? I know spiritually speaking, like Marxism, like showing that its self-indulgence is in failure and patheticness. Like I smelled blood in the water, right? And I think the entire I don't know about the conservative movement outside the church too much. I haven't seen much of that, but like something spiritually happened there where like the two things happened. One, the church smelled blood in the water, and two, like I know that I was too similar to those people who praised Simone Biles for quitting. And I was not similar enough to real champions, right? And that was a big wake-up call for me. And yeah, I just keep remembering that this is like real war, It's like if I hear guns going off outside, I can't just like be in here like doing whatever's most convenient for me because I somehow trust that the gun fire is not going to come in here for some reason, It's like it's like when the real stuff's going on, we actually have to go out there and handle it at that point. We can't any longer be like it's for someone else. It's like a bunch of us have got to enlist, a bunch of us have, a bunch of our businesses have got to become factories for the purpose of the war. Like we've got to do this or else, I mean, you can just imagine like if Hitler in Japan had never been stopped, or if China and Russia, I mean, it's bad enough there, I mean, China is a huge portion of the world. That's tragic. And then if that becomes the whole globe, whew. So and I'm talking about the spiritual war, so and that means that like the republicanism is on the other side. If we don't evangelize republicanism, if we don't do that, then the other side is just going to win, right? It's not like the Republicans aren't like in the fight. They're definitely the more fertile field, right? So that we can harvest from there and then get more people in the fight, but they're not in the fight. And if they need Christian votes, then we can use our votes maybe to force them to act like they're in the fight. But the only way we can do that is if we first withhold our votes from them because they're not in the fight, right? So if we have our own party to vote for, then if they want to work with us enough that it's actually worth it to vote for them, but we got to wait until it's actually worth it, right? We can't just give them our votes for no reason. And if we do that, then, they're just going to be secular instead of Christian. But, and sorry, I don't know how much or little time you have. I know I get ranty.
The abortion thing is a tough one, right? Because we obviously can't break God's law in order to stop people from offing their children, right? I think a lot of people, I had a few messages that reached out to me. What are you actually saying about abortion, right?
What are you actually saying that these men should be doing?
I pressed the wrong button. I meant to press stop cam. So, if you really need to go now, brother, of course you can. But I don't think this is going to be a very long clip at all either. So that's up to you.
I'll go ahead and wait at least for the end of the clip, and then, well, end of the clip or hour 50, whichever we hit first.
Okay. Good to know. And then let me try not to. I clicked the wrong one the last time. How to unsissify. Okay. So I'm going to go back to where this clip starts because it's literally only 15 seconds earlier. Okay.
Because we obviously can't break God's law in order to stop people from offing their children, right? I think a lot of people,
I did share the audio, right?
Yes.
Okay.
few messages that reach out to me. What are you actually saying about abortion, right? What are you actually saying that these men should be doing at the abortion clinics, right? And I like what they're doing right now. Preaching the gospel is good. Going there and pleading with women to not kill their babies is good. I like that stuff. And I don't really know what else could be done at the abortion clinics. That would be legitimate. I'm not saying I have the answers there, but
let's get it HD.
There are people on the front lines that I think would have come up with better ideas and more effective ideas than what they're currently doing if they didn't have to simultaneously fight off all of the nonsense, all of the scoffers saying, "Oh, that's not Christ-like." So the reality, it kind of reminds me of, what would our society look like right now if we didn't have all these burdensome laws against businesses and stuff like that? We'd probably have flying cars at this point. It's hard to say. I don't know. But the thing is, because they're dealing with all these fake, phony, baloney compliance laws, and so they don't have time to innovate like they should be doing. So my point is, though, that reviving faithful churches, here's something I think would really help. We need to start doing the things that are definitely lawful to do. For example, excommunicating and church disciplining and confronting people who are pro-choice in our midst. Like, let's just start from the beginning, the basic stuff. Kick them out of your church if they think it's okay to kill children. Kick them out. We don't need that kind of influence in the church.
That's it. How have we not already been doing this? What is wrong with us? I'm sorry, but this is bad. I know that was fierce, but it's bad. I mean, what do you think, brother?
Sorry, I had myself on mute. I think that the only reason that it is controversial for somebody to say what AD just said is because the society is so far gone. That should be obvious. That should be one of those things where it's like, oh, you're not a Christian. You support baby murder. You're just obviously not a Christian. And we move on.
Well, the other way that they defend against this is that means anyone who votes Democrat. Now you're making it political, supposedly, right? And that's the thing. If you're voting Democrat, then you need to be excommunicated from the church. Now, maybe there is an argument that people who vote Republican need to be excommunicated for some reason. I'll hear that argument. But if you want to argue that Democrats can vote, that they can actively take part in murdering babies, that's what that vote is. I mean, you may as well work in a forceps factory at that point. So you're actively taking part in murdering babies. Then that's it. You need to repent as a matter of church discipline, or you're out of the church. And this thing is, what are the boundaries of church? These people already are out of the church. We have been saying this. We have been saying that if you're part of murdering babies, you're not part of the church. So I guess in a sense we've done this, but we can't make it official. Then that means that, like, what's supposedly official is not even a church at that point. The only thing that's a church is where it actually is determined that, yeah, you're not Christian if you're murdering babies. That's a matter of church discipline, right? And so spiritually, I think that has already happened, that if you're supporting the murder of babies, the church has confronted you. People have confronted you individually. People have confronted you in front of the church and all that, And then eventually you're treated as a publican, a tax collector, and a Gentile, and you're not fellowshipped. And so that means that if there's whole churches who half the people there are Democrats, half of them are baby murderers, then are we fellowshipped with half that church, or are we not fellowshipped with any of that church? Because the point he's responding to is someone listed some good things we can do. And if you'll give us maybe flexibility of maybe 2 extra minutes or something like that, CJ, unless you really can't, because we might run a tiny bit over. But I think we're on something really good here. It'll be worth just a tiny bit of extra time. So, but we've got to make it. It's got to be official in the churches. I don't remember exactly what sentence I was just on. I should have just kept going. But already So it's like, are we in fellowship with half that? We've got to make it. I don't know. I lost the train of what I was saying, and I think I've made my point pretty clear. And I think every Christian agrees that, like, yeah. So they already are as disfellowshipped as like. But we need our official churchage to agree with the honest agreement of the church that half the church is saying, and then the pastor supposedly agrees with the correct half of the church, but they won't act on it. Why? For political reasons, because there are people in their church who will hate that decision. Well, then you're not a pastor anymore. If you're working for like politicalness instead of working for obeying Jesus, then what you're doing is not in service of Jesus. It's in service of political expediency. That's a Roman type of power. That's specifically not the type of power we use in our kingdom. So I don't know if you have anything more to say. I know I had like a good way to say something that I missed, but that's okay. Things happen. But if you want to give any last words on this concept of officially church disciplining, I think if you go to a brick and mortar church, you should bring this up to your pastor. And if your pastor won't do anything about it, you maybe don't have a pastor, and you maybe don't have a brick and mortar church, and you maybe need to find one. So if you'll say what you want to say, CJ, and then we'll close. Or we will be closed. We'll be that fast with it.
Yeah, so the last thing I would just say on this particular issue is that it's not an issue that can be basically, what's the word there, straddled, right? It's one of those, you are either for us or against those things. And I'm not sure about the, quote, abolitionist movement itself, but I do know, just in the philosophical sense of the word, it is abolitionism or nothing. And that should be not even up for dispute inside the church. That should be one of those things where it's the church who's coming up with this particular idea of complete abolition. If we're disputing that inside the church, then I think, as Nicholas said, that's not a church.
And abolition means to abolish abortion in this context, right?
Yes, like entirely.
Yeah, because some people hear abolition and they're automatically thinking of, the Emancipation Proclamation kind of a thing.
Right.
Yeah. So, okay, perfect. So, oh, good. I'm glad Honesty Angel's pastor brings it up regularly to the congregation. I do think the step of actually following through to discipline and having the membership lists reflect it is where the church needs to go. So I'm not necessarily criticizing any specific pastor for not going there yet. And also, to be honest, I don't think it's really church order for a woman herself to confront a pastor with this. So then it would be, so then that makes Honesty Angel exempt to the specific advice I gave anyway. But yeah, I think that not necessarily blaming individuals, but blaming the whole church that like we have not officiated this extremely important point. And if we're serious about anything important, then we have got to officiate that point. And hey, if anyone wants to put me in charge of a church, there's so many bad pastors out there that, it's like, I don't know if I'm totally qualified or if I'd be going Deborah, but either way, I'm willing to do that sort of a thing, to like do my best to pastor a church and to be replaced if I don't hold up to it, So, yeah, because this is so I'm not blaming any individual pastors, but I am saying that this is the direction we need to go. And maybe I'm just some guy talking on the internet about it. I'm willing to be more or whatever, but that's neither here nor there. I was making the point that like I'm not choosing to merely be some guy on the internet, necessarily, but I'm just doing my best to be honest in Christ. Whatever Christ has for me is where he'll put me. It's not about me. My point's just that I'm not trying to be totally an armchair quarterback, right? It's not just about that. It's about the body functioning. And if my part of the body is to be one of the first, is to, you know, AD said it, and now I'm amplifying it. Let's more of us amplify it. So let's all of us, when the issue of abortion comes up, be like, you know, before the church really talks about abortion, we've got to start doing church discipline on it. We've got to get real about it, you know? So let's make this a talking point. And with that, it was a 1 or 2 more minutes than I meant for you, CJ, but thank you for your patience. Everyone, just trust Messiah.
Absolutely. And God bless.